All right, this introduction to GIMP is going to cover an overview of what you're looking at when you have GIMP opened up. When you open GIMP for the first time, you may see a couple of windows that look like this. It really is going to depend on how its view settings are upon booting up. Right now it's in a multi-window mode, and for the sake of this course and for future tutorials, I'm going to be working out of a single window mode, and you might find that to be a little bit more convenient. Some people like the multi-windows. I prefer the single window. It's more like Photoshop, and it's just something that I'm more accustomed to. If your plans are to graduate from GIMP and buy Photoshop and start using Photoshop, I would encourage you to use the single window mode. That's not to say that you have to buy Photoshop. GIMP, as I said early on, is very comparable to Photoshop, and a lot of people use GIMP exclusively. So if you want to join me here with this tutorial, what I'm going to ask you to do is to change your view, if you're in this current view, to a single window mode. To do that, you simply click on the Windows menu and go down to single window mode right here, and then I click on that and it should change it to a single window. Now I have everything contained in one window, and this will be the view that I will be working from. Alright, now I want to familiarize you with some of the things here in GIMP, and what I'm going to do for the first part of this video is going to be going over just the menu. And when I refer to the menu in GIMP, I'm referring to this row right here, this horizontal row, or menus. And the menu starts out with the file menu, and the file menu is where you're going to start and end your projects. So you're either going to create a new one, or you're going to open up an existing one right here in the file menu. And it's pretty standard, like any other file menu of other applications. You've got new and open, and then you've got some open recent ones. Then the next section of the file menu is for saving your projects. You've got save, save as copy, which is kind of nice. You can save as a copy so that you can have multiple versions of the same project, and if you want to make a change to one without compromising the original project, that's where you would do that. And then you've got a revert key, which is nice. You can revert back to an existing version of your file. Export and export to or create templates. It's another option, and then printing down here below, and then closing. So this is basically the file menu, is where you're going to start and end your projects. Now I want to point out here, all of the shortcuts in a graphic editor are very important, and they will save you a lot of time. In fact, there is a shortcut file in the resource section of this course, and I would like you to open that up and become familiar with that. In fact, the quizzes that you will be taking in the future will largely be over those shortcuts. And the sooner you learn those shortcuts, the more efficient you will become in using the GIMP software and even the Inkscape software that we're going to be using later in the semester. Right now, I'm just familiarizing you with them, like the Control-N for new, the Control-O for open, Control-Alt-O. These are all shortcut keys. If you push these keys on your keyboard, you're going to take this action and run it from your keyboard. And it's just going to save you some time. All right, from the file menu, I'm going to go over to the edit menu. In the edit menu is where you're going to make changes like undoing and redoing and undoing history. History inside of GIMP is simply a step-by-step recording of every action that you take. So it keeps a history of everything you do so that you can go back to a previous state in the image manipulation. The next section is going to be where you can copy and paste as buffer. And then there's some other things down here in the edit where it pertains to filling and using a stroke selection or a stroke path on an object. And then there are some preferences, and would go to like hardware, like input devices, if you want to use a tablet or a keyboard or a special mouse or anything like that. For the most part, we're going to be working out of default on these sections, so we won't be down here. Next over from Edit is Select. And Select is where you can choose parts of your image. You simply use the Select menu or Select tools to select a portion of your image. For example, let's say you have a photo of a basketball game and you want to select the basketball. And the reason you might want to select the basketball is maybe you want to change its color, or maybe you want to create duplicate basketballs so it looks like they're dribbling with two balls. Then you would use a selection tool to select that basketball. There are a number of ways to do that, and we're going to cover the different selection tools and the more common selection tools a little bit later. But a selection just means that you are selecting a part of the image. And then down below that, there's a way that you can kind of change or modify something that you select. So if you select the basketball from an image, you can feather it or sharpen it, you can shrink it, you can grow it, you can give it a border, you can distort it, and you can round it, rectangular size. All of these things are things that you can do to anything that you select within a photo. Next over from Select is the View. And the View is just simply where you can show what you are working on. You can zoom in, you can look at a full screen version, you can show selections. You can also snap to guides. Now what this means is that there's an invisible grid on every image that you edit. And you can show this grid using a different menu, and I'll cover that in a second. But the snap to guides means that anytime you put something or copy a selection or add something to the photo, it's automatically going to temporarily lock into that grid. So that if you want to move things around, if you're wanting to use straight lines, if you're wanting to create a sign or something like that, using the snap to grid is a great little feature there. Padding color, you can use padding colors and change the background of the stage area, which is over here, and then more showing of toolbars and rulers and things like that, everything under the View. Pretty self-explanatory. If you want to view it, it's under the View. The image menu, and notice that all of these, and I've been covering these all of them have the underline under a letter. That's the shortcut. This is the underline for I. So if I'm here in Gimp and I just press the I key, sorry about that, brought open a different window there. If I'm in Gimp and I hit the I button, hold down the Alt key and hit the I button, it'll open up that menu. Or if I hold down the Alt key and hit the F key, Alt F, that opens the file. Alt S will open the select. And you can tell by looking at the menu, the first line. All right, now back to image menu. The image menu is where you can, again, transform or modify the image. And there are a number of different tools here. You can duplicate something. You can change its mode. We're going to be working primarily out of red, green, and blue mode. But there are different modes here, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll cover the modes in a later lecture. In transform, you can flip the orientation of an image. So if you've got a picture of something, you can flip it horizontally, and that will mean you're basically looking at a mirrored image of the photo. You can flip it vertically, you can invert it, you can rotate it clockwise, counterclockwise, however you want to do it, you can do that. You can modify the canvas size. Everything will be working from a canvas out here in the center stage, and you can fit the canvas to the layers. More about layers in a second. The print size and scale the image. Scaling means you can just change the size up and down. You can crop it. You can cut it. So if you've got an image that's 1,000 pixels wide, you can crop it down to 500 using the crop tool. Basically, you're changing the size. You can merge visible layers. I'll explain layers a little bit later. And then the guides, these are going to be the grid that I talked about earlier, where you've got a grid or a guide over your image for placement of other layers or objects. This is the layers menu, or the Alt-L will bring up the layer. And the layer menu, what you need to keep in mind when you work with any image editor that has layer capabilities, think of the clear acetate film sheets that you had in class. Think back, some of you might know an instructor who wrote on a clear piece of transparency. You can take those layers, and this is what how early animation started out back in the very early days of like Walt Disney. You'd have all of these layers, these transparent layers, and on one layer you might draw an arm, on the next layer you might draw a head, another layer you might have the torso, and so all of these things together would create a character. And rather than redrawing that whole character, you could just remove the arm layer and draw the arm in a different position, and then you'd put that layer back in there, and it would appear that the character had moved his or her arm. But that's what a layer is. Think of it as a stack of transparencies. And all layers are these transparencies that you could put anything you want on there. But the layer that's on the top is going to be more visible than the one that's on the bottom. Whatever's on the bottom is going to be covered up by anything above it. The layer that's on the top is the most visible layer. You'll need to keep that in mind as you work forward on some of your assignments. Sometimes people get confused, and it comes down to either a layer's being hidden or invisible, or there's a layer on top of it, and that's why you're not seeing what you just changed. You can stack layers, you can group them, you can transform them. All of these things you can do here with a layer. You can merge them down. You can select, let's say you have an image with 10 layers in it and you only want to merge 3 of the 10. You can select the layers that you want to merge and you can merge them. You can lock them down, you can duplicate layers, and then you can modify them with transparencies and transform them, just the layers, by flipping them like you did the image. You can scale layers down and you can crop them. You can select within a layer as well. The next menu is the colors menu, and this is where you can set up a color balance, colorize, change the different color features of an image. You want to color balance, it's where you can go in and modify the colors. Hue or saturation, it's where you can adjust the richness of a color. Colorize is where you can change the color. The brightness and contrast is pretty self-explanatory. The threshold, it reduces an image to 2 colors using whatever the threshold settings are. Levels are a little bit more advanced, as are the curves, and we'll get into those a little bit later. But you can adjust the levels and curves of a color using the histogram of an image. And I know that some of you may not understand what that means, but every layer and every image that has color levels, and there are mathematical curves to figure those color levels. Now, this is a little bit different than the vector image that we talked about in the introduction. This is simply the color curves and the color levels. It is not it does not pertain to the size or the scalability of an image like in Inkscape. Posterize, that's where you can kind of change it down to a certain set of colors. This was a big thing that was done with the first Barack Obama election. His campaign posterized a picture of him and put the word hope under it. That's all they did, is they used this posterize feature in Photoshop. Gimp has it too, and you reduce it down to a small amount of colors, and it creates this posterized effect. Desaturate is where you do just that. You desaturate the color from an image or make it black and white. Down below you have the auto color features where you can auto adjust the white balance and equalize the colors and enhance them that way. Then you have a mixer down below for the components. There's a way that you can get into the mapping of the colors. We probably won't get into that at all, but you need to know it's there. And there's the histogram, and I mentioned that earlier. It's kind of a visual way of looking at the colors within a picture. The next menu over is the tools. Again, if I hold down the Alt and the T, it'll bring up that menu. And the tools, I'm going to cover the tools a little bit on the next session. The tools, everything that you see here, are also right over here in this tool section. So just to keep the video at a more manageable length, I'm not going to get into tools because I'm going to devote an entire lecture to just the tools. So I'm going to skip over the tools. The next one is the filters. And the filters are these automatic filters that you can apply to any image or any layer within your image. And they range anywhere from making something blurry to enhancing it and applying all these different filters. There are tons of them, and you can add more filters. You can add more options to these. You can download different filters and apply them. But that's where that is done. The best way to learn about filters really is to just use some of them and to explore more or less. The windows, I've kind of already showed you the windows. This is where you can switch in between single and multi-window mode. There's also some dock settings here, and when I refer to, or what Gimp refers to as docks, are these sections over here. These are all docks, different parts of the stage here. This is a dock, and you can change the dock. You can change what you see here. All of these things are docks. The toolbox, if you toolbox right down here for the different tool options. You can hide everything. Simply press the tab. If I press the tab, see how it's selecting there. All right, and then the help. If you ever get lost or you have a question, you can use the help menu, and you can access the manual here, or you can do a search for help. And they also offer tips of the day here and a plug-in browser. But that pretty much covers everything here in the menu for the Gimp program for the graphic design course at NEO A&M College.